All right, welcome to The Explainer. Let's jump right in because we have a lot of ground to cover today. We're exploring a truly profound teaching from the Church of 1122. Specifically, we're diving into a recent sermon by Pastor Joby that takes us on this incredible journey. We're starting with a massive, high-stakes confrontation in first-century Jerusalem and bringing it all the way down to a very real, very personal invitation that's standing right in front of you today. We're going to unpack the historical tension of Jesus literally being cornered in the temple, how he just masterfully handled his critics, and what all of this means for this wild, over-the-top concept of grace. So settle in. This is going to be a good one.
To really feel the weight of this teaching, we have to set the stage. Picture this. Jesus is in the temple. He's immediately surrounded by the religious elite, the heavy hitters of the day. And they walk right up to him and drop this trap of a question. They ask, "By what authority are you doing these things?" Now, what's really fascinating here is the absolute bad faith behind that question. As the 1122 sermon unpacks so well, these leaders, they didn't actually care about the answer. They were actively trying to back him into a corner. I mean, they wanted him to either claim divine authority so they could hit him with a blasphemy charge, or deny it so they could totally ruin his reputation with the crowds. It was a complete setup.
And this sets up such an interesting dynamic between the two sides. On one side, as Pastor Joby points out in our primary source, you have these religious leaders who are just operating in total bad faith. They're playing a rigged game. But on the other side, Jesus' response is just masterful. He absolutely refuses to play. He knows exactly what's in their hearts, he knows exactly what they're trying to do, and he just effortlessly sidesteps the trap. He completely denies them the easy soundbite they were so desperately fishing for.
To really get why the tension in that room was so thick, you've got to look at the timeline of that week. Over just 3 short days, the stakes absolutely skyrocketed. Day 1, that was the triumphal entry, with Jesus riding into Jerusalem like a king. Day 2, he goes into the temple and violently clears out the money changers. So by day 3, when this whole authority trap goes down, the religious leaders are fuming. Their power is under direct threat. They are literally looking for a way to destroy him, which makes his cool, collected response to them just all the more incredible.
To explain exactly why Jesus reacted the way he did, Pastor Joby used an analogy in his sermon that just hits the nail on the head. He said, "Don't ever fight with somebody on the internet. It's like wrestling a pig. Everybody gets dirty, and the pig likes it." I mean, how true is that? The point here is that Jesus knew he was dealing with the original first-century internet trolls. He knew that arguing directly with their bad faith question would just be wrestling in the mud. He wasn't about to get dirty playing their rigged game.
Which actually ties in perfectly with a quote from Voltaire that historical commentaries often bring up. Judge a man by his questions rather than his answers. The religious leader's question wasn't some genuine, pure-hearted search for truth. It was a weapon. And because their question revealed their corrupt motives, Jesus just completely pivots. Instead of giving them a straight answer, he takes total control of the narrative by doing what he does best. He starts telling stories.
So Jesus looks at this hostility and responds by delivering 3 back-to-back parables aimed right at the nation of Israel and its leaders. He doesn't just give them one story, he layers them. The first one is all about obedience to the will of the Father. The second focuses on the violent rejection of God's servants. And the third, which is really the core of 1122 message, is about a massive wedding banquet. Through these parables, he's basically holding up a mirror to the religious leaders, getting them to practically condemn themselves with their own logic.
But right before he gets to that final banquet parable, Jesus drops a massive theological anchor. He references Psalm 118, specifically this ancient concept of the cornerstone. As supplemental theological scholars note, Jesus is demonstrating where his true authority comes from. By quoting the ancient scriptures, he's proving that his ministry isn't just some random, sudden rebellion. It is the exact fulfillment of biblical continuity. He proves his divine authority using the very texts these leaders claim to protect, completely dismantling their trap in the process.
And that brings us to the absolute heart of the sermon, the third parable of the wedding banquet. Pastor Joby points out that literally everything about this story is over the top by any rational human standard. A king throws this huge wedding feast, but the original VIP guests refuse to come. So the king tells his servants to go out to the streets and invite absolutely anyone they can find. Good, bad, it literally doesn't matter. Pastor Joby calls this scandalous grace because it completely shatters all the conventional rules of religion and society.
So let's look at the scandal of grace. Pastor Joby breaks down the scandalous nature of this grace into 3 core points. First, everybody is invited. Seriously, no matter your background, your past, or what you used to do. Second, everybody gets in the exact same way. There's no VIP entrance for the rich and a side door for everyone else. Jesus is the only way in for everyone equally. And third, the price has already been paid. You absolutely do not have to earn your seat at this table.
Now, when you hear about that kind of radical grace, the natural human reaction is to think, well, hold on, what about my past? I am definitely not worthy. And Pastor Joby addresses this head-on with a fantastic quote. He says, "Are you worthy? No. Except in the kingdom of God, all it takes is for you to say yes to the invitation." And that right there, that is the reality of redemption over religion. Religion tells you that you have to clean yourself up to be worthy. Redemption says you just have to say yes to the one who already cleaned you up.
Okay, so this brings up a crucial question. How does a local church actually protect and steward this incredible message today? Because honestly, grace like this is delicate. It can be so easily distorted by toxic leadership. So the sermon transitions into explaining the biblical model for church leadership, emphasizing how absolutely critical it is that the people guiding the church have been totally transformed by the very grace they're preaching.
To see how seriously this is taken, we can look at the qualifications for an elder found in 1 Timothy chapter 3. An elder has to be blameless and above reproach. They need to be vigilant, sober-minded, hospitable, and gentle. They definitely cannot be a drunkard or greedy for money. They have to manage their own household well, and importantly, they can't be a new convert. They need real spiritual maturity to handle the heavy responsibility of shepherding a church. These strict biblical qualifications are exactly why the 1122 congregation feels so confident trusting their elders to lead and pray for them.
But look, the point here isn't that these elders are perfect, sinless superhumans. Far from it. They are just deeply transformed people. There's this incredibly powerful testimony shared during the service from one of the 1122 elders. He said, "When God got a hold of me, I became less self-reliant and more God-centered." He openly talked about spending his 20s chasing money and control, just trying to survive on his own sheer willpower. But when he finally yielded to God, his entire paradigm shifted. The leaders of the church are the very first ones to admit that the only reason they have a seat at the banquet is because of God's grace.
And this leadership model actively shapes the day-to-day life of the church. Right now, the 1122 Church is actively preparing for an upcoming movement of God they call the Saturated Event, and they're taking real, tangible steps to get ready. The congregation is texting their prayer requests directly to the elders at 441122. They are engaging in focused elder-led prayer over those requests, and they're preparing their own hearts through fasting and worship. It's this beautiful collective effort to essentially put their yes on the table.
Which all builds up to this massive gathering. Saturated is happening from September 16th through the 20th. It's 5 consecutive days of just worshiping their faces off, hearing from some of the absolute best preachers in the country, and it all wraps up with a massive Sunday of baptisms. It's essentially a modern-day reflection of that ancient wedding banquet we talked about, a place where everyone is invited to come together, experience real grace, and celebrate the fact that the price has already been paid for them.
And that brings us to the emotional climax of this entire explainer. Everything we've talked about, the parables, the high bar for the elders, the intense preparation for Saturated, it all zeroes in on one single undeniable truth. As Pastor Joby declared to his church, and as it says right there in the book of Revelation, you are invited to the marriage banquet of the Lamb, right now, today. The God of the universe is extending a personal invitation to you, regardless of your past, to surrender your life, stop banking on your own good works, and join his family.
So we are left with the only question that truly matters. Will you say yes to the invitation? I'm going to leave you with that provocative thought. Take a moment today, reflect on this scandalous, completely over-the-top grace we've unpacked, and ask yourself how you will respond to the King's invitation. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep seeking the truth.